Hello everyone, and welcome back to Sir Coach Shows Off Pathfinder 2e. Today's video, I'm going to do a short little play session for an Alchemist. Why am I doing this? Well, I've seen around on posts people who are wondering, how do you deal with your daily prep? How do you deal with splash damage for bombs? And I figured this might be a nice, easy one to show people. Now, the way these little playthroughs are going to work is I will go through and make the character. Simple level 1 characters. Might talk about leveling up in a later video. After I created it, I'll go through a few examples of how to deal with the prep during the beginning of the day, and then a short little combat scenario. For creating a character, I'm going to focus on the Wanderer's Guide, just my preference, but there's also the Path Builder. Both are quite good tools. I'm not sponsored by either. So, let's start with an Alchemist. I'm going to start at level 1. Don't need to mess with any of these. If you have homebrew in here, you can always see it here, and choose whatever books you want to use. So I have these random ones over here. After you have the basics determined, and any variant rules that you want to use, you can go on to selecting your ancestry. So, for this ancestry, you need to think about what will benefit you as your base class, or whatever you want to go with for flavor. Usually I want to try a good mix. So an elf is a nice fun class in general, or race in general. It's fairly basic. It gives you a boost to intelligence, which is the key ability score for alchemists. It also gives you a boost to dexterity, which you need your dexterity to hit with your bombs or any ranged weapons you're using. And then the free you can put where you want. Slight flaw to constitution, which isn't great, but as long as you're far enough back, hopefully you're not getting hit by too much. And then you get your other basic elf aspects. So after you have chosen your race, or your ancestry, as Pathfinder prefers to call it, choose your heritage. And for this one, I went with Whisper Elf. Why'd I go with this? So I can find those undetected and hidden creatures. Because once you find them, then you can bomb them. Beyond that, we want our ancestry feat. And for this one, I wanted to go with Elven Verve. And you might be asking, what's Elven Verve and what does it do? Well, while all elves are immune to paralyzing touch of ghouls, you're able to shake off even more things. So you get a bonus to immobilized, paralyzed, or slowed conditions. And it reduces the duration of them. So it makes it so you're much more likely to actually be able to get your actions. And then we also have to choose what we want our other ability boost in. So we could offset our negative from Constitution. Doesn't sound like too bad of an idea, just to make sure we're not getting hurt too much. So hit that in there, and let's just grab a language. And that's everything we get from our ancestry. So you see how there's no more little blue circles. Let's go on to our background. So background, there are a lot of them for Pathfinder 2e. So for this one, ended up going with Saboteur. Keep in mind, anything with the rare or uncommon trait, you'll have to make sure you get your GM's permission for. Saboteur is neither of those, so you just get it. So you have a knack for destroying things, and that definitely sounds like an alchemist. So this one boosts either strength or dex, and then whichever one you want. Which, as you can probably imagine, will want to boost dexterity and then intelligence. And then the concealing legerdman, not too bad. So confirm that background. And, well, let's go ahead and boost dexterity, so we can hit things better at range. And then we also want to boost our intelligence. Because again, intelligence is what our base class is for after. Alright, so that's everything from our background. Now for our class. Well, we already know what we're doing with that one. Alchemist. Good old Alchemist, which we have all of these different features. Like I said, intelligence is our key ability modifier. Get 8 hit points a level, not too bad. Trained to perception, Expert in fortitude and reflex, but not will. And we're trained in all attacks, including alchemical bombs. Which, keep in mind, if people are dealing with other classes, alchemical bombs do classify as a martial weapon. So anybody who's trained in martial weapons can also use your bombs. So you can always hand them off. Then we get crafting, 3 plus our intelligence modifier for other skills, which, keep in mind, our intelligence is going to be high, so we're still going to get a number. And then we're trained in medium, light, and unarmored. The medium might seem incorrect based off some people, and no, I did not mean to print that off. So the medium might not seem like it's correct, but one of the erratas did add medium armor training to the Alchemist. Alright. So, we're level 1. So our intelligence gets a boost. We get alchemical feat. We get a formula book. And we can do alchemy in general. So, a few things to keep in mind. We have a lot of options that we're going to have to deal with for this. So we have a bunch of skills. Which, let's see. Let's go with acrobatics, arcana. We already have crafting, medicine. Oh, let's go with some nature, society, and stealth. Those are nice, good, roundabout grouping. And that's what we get from our base class, so we can close that up. And now we get 4 free boosts, which let's go ahead and throw into dexterity, intelligence, wisdom, and let's throw it into charisma. Or let's go with strength instead. That way we have a nice capability of carrying around a lot of stuff. So our first level, Alchemist feat. Well, that might matter more once we know what type of Alchemist we're doing. Okay? So before you choose that, you should really choose your research field. And this is going to determine what your focus is as an alchemist. Alright? You have 4 options. You have your bomber. You make bombs. You throw bombs. Your chirurgeon, however you want to pronounce that, dealing with the healing and helpful items. The mutagenist, if you want to make your teammates weird. Or yourself. And then the toxicologist. You poison people. Which for this one, let's go with the toxicologist. That seems fun. So as you can see, you specialize in toxins. You start with 2 common alchemical poisons in your formula book. Okay? And you can apply injury poisons you're holding to a weapon you're wielding as 1 action. So that makes it fairly easy instead of doing the 2 actions. Furthermore, you can change the DC of your poisons to your class DC if it's higher. So even low-level poisons are still going to be fairly relevant later on in the game. So this seems like it'll be a fairly fun one to deal with. So now we know what our research field is. Now we can choose a feat. Which we have a few different options in here. So I think I want to go with subtle delivery. And why am I choosing subtle delivery? Well, this one, you can deliver toxins with a blowgun. Quite often, you won't be able to do that too well. Because blowguns don't do much damage. And if you end up resisting all the damage, you don't deal any poison damage to them. With this one, even if the target takes no damage on a blowgun attack, they still actually take the poison. And if they fail to save, it's a crit fail instead, if you critically hit them with your blowgun. So, those are the options I think I'll go with there. And now, since we boosted intelligence, we actually have 1 more skill that we have to choose. Which, what would be a fun one to deal with? And deception's not too bad. So now we can close that back up and close that up, and we see that there's no longer blue circles. So that's basically it for that. So now if we go onto our sheet, we'll end up seeing, once it loads, one downside to this situation is we see our full character sheet here. So we have an armor class of 16 when we have nothing on. because we have a pretty good dexterity. Intelligence boost 4. Alright, saves. And then we have all this information on here. Well, we don't have any items. We still need to get our formulas. But when we talk about formulas, there's a few things to keep in mind. First of all, we have a formula book. Alright? And it's a standard formula book. It's free. You don't have to pay for it. And it contains formulas for 2 common first-level alchemical items of your choice, in addition to those gained by the alchemical crafting feat and your research field. So we're already starting with 2 formulas from the formula book. Alchemical crafting. When you select this feat, you immediately add the formula for 4 common first-level alchemical items to your formula book. So we're now up to 6 formulas. Then our research field, and we're doing toxicologist, you start with a formula for 2 common first-level alchemical formulas. So we now have 8 formulas at level 1. Okay? Keep in mind, when you're doing that, 2 have to be from your research field. The other 6 just have to be first-level common formulas. Okay? So keep that in mind. Now, one other aspect to note in here. When we are creating our potions, or our alchemical items, you don't need a crafting check, and you get a certain number of batches of infused reagents. Okay? You get a number of batches equal to your level, plus your intelligence modifier. So our level 1 character with intelligence of 18 gets 5 batches every day. Okay? They can be used for advanced alchemy or quick alchemy. Okay? Now, when you're looking at your research field, there's another thing you want to keep in mind. When you use batches of infused reagents to create a signature item using advanced alchemy, you create 3 items instead of 2. Okay? These are classified as your signature formulas. So whenever you're using that, for your signature formulas, you'll create 3 of them instead of 2 when doing advanced alchemy. And that's the advantage of the advanced one. Is by whenever you use an infused reagent to create advanced or create alchemy that way, you get 2 for every batch of reagents you use. Quick alchemy, you get 1. And they only last for a round. So keep that idea in mind. So we've made our alchemist. We still have to pick out formulas, but not going to go through that whole process. Instead, let's just jump over and take a look at the alchemist. So here we have our alchemist on a cemetery, and there's a bunch of kobold warriors against him. So if you open up our alchemist sheet, the stats are slightly different, but the dexterity and intelligence are the 2 most important ones. And again, you can put them around any way you want. You'll see that we have all of our aspects in here. So we have our infused reagents, advanced alchemy, quick alchemy, our formula book. So I put all these in here. We have our proficiencies, and we see that we are trained with alchemical bombs. And then the crafting tab here, and in case you don't know, this is Foundry, hosted on Forge. We see our 8 formulas. Okay, we have our 2 poisons, and then we have some bombs, some antidotes, elixirs of life, what have you. So now let's go through an example of doing our daily preparations. So let's say we know we're going to be going into combat that day, so we want to make sure we have a good amount of assortment of things prepared. You'll see that infused reagents, we get 5 per day. So I want to make sure I make some poisons. So let's make a batch of each of our poisons. By default, they'll make 2 each. Sadly, Foundry does not have the built-in portion for making 3 for your signature items yet. I'm foreseeing at a future cost. So we see how making 2 of each of these only costs a total of 2 of our reagents. And keep in mind, when it actually gets made, it'll make 3. But if I change that to 3 right here, you'll see how that cost went up. So you don't want to do that if you're doing this in Foundry. But I'll show you how to fix that in a moment. But beyond that, definitely want to make sure we have some bombs. So let's do 1 set of bombs and 1 set of elixirs. So I have these 4 things that I'm going to make ahead of time. If I hit complete daily crafting, well, you'll see I'm now down to 1 infused reagent. So let's go ahead and turn those off. And if I go to my inventory, I'll now see all these temporary items. Now keep in mind, that venom and poison, I actually make 3 of each when I do my daily preparation. And you can see I have some basic equipment in here, including a blowgun, because remember, we're good with blowguns. A dagger, because again, we want to be able to poison stuff. It's fun. A sling, not sure how often we'd use that, and our bombs. And you can see here we have our different actions that we can have. So let's now go through an example of combat. So in Foundry, if you don't know, you can select everything as a GM. Start a combat. Bring out the combat tracker and roll everyone's initiative. Yay, everyone has initiative. So begin the encounter. This is not a kobold demonstration, so let's go with an alchemist. So we'll skip their turns for right now. And let's go with the alchemist. So the first thing we can do with the alchemist is throw a bomb. So unless you have the quick bomber feat from the alchemist, you'd have to take 1 action to draw a bomb. 1 action done. And if you see here, we have to spend 1 interact action to draw it. And it does have the manipulate trait. So you have to keep in mind that, because you might end up being in a situation where you're going to end up taking an attack of opportunity, depending if the opponent has it. Now, when you're dealing with a bomb, you want to think about who you want to target and the splash damage. Because all bombs deal splash damage. And there's 2 situations of them dealing it. If you hit your target, you will do splash damage to your target and all adjacent squares. Doesn't matter if you're there or an ally's there, you're going to do damage to them. Or if you miss your target, but don't critically miss, you will deal splash damage just to your target. So based off that situation, this alchemist could target this kobold or this one to maximize, or potentially this one, to maximize the amount of damage they do. Because here there's 4 adjacent. Here there's 4 adjacent. Here there are only 3 adjacent. So if you really want to maximize your splash damage, you should be targeting that one or this one. Furthermore, Pathfinder rule that a lot of people end up ignoring, this kobold in the back would have lesser cover because it's behind another creature the same size. Alright, so the front kobold is probably the better choice for targeting. So now that we have that character targeted, let's go ahead and throw our bomb. So we're throwing it, we get a +6 because we have +3 from Dex, and +3 because we're trained. We don't have anything else going on with it, because even if you look at some bombs, you'll actually end up seeing, not usually the lesser ones, but the moderates, will end up giving you a bonus to the attack rolls, but not this one. So we do a roll, and we see that it is a miss. So what does that mean? Well, it means that we do not deal splash damage to all of the creatures, but we do 1 damage. And you'll see that our regular damage would be d6 + 1. But then we can do the 1 splash. Have this person selected, and we can deal the damage. So by missing, we only did 1 splash damage. So you still do a little bit of damage. It wasn't a critical miss, thankfully, but it's still a miss. And one of the nicer things, you can now see we have one fewer bombs in our inventory because we threw one. Well, let's go ahead and throw again. And let's say they're getting a pretty nice bonus for some reason. Just so I can show you what happens on an actual hit. Oh, that's a hit, but still not a crit. These guys have pretty good AC for challenge rating -1. So it has hit. Roll the damage. So it's d6 plus 1 damage. So they take the damage. And if you look at the stats of this thing, it also deals persistent poison damage, which we can drag that and add it to the creature. Because notice how it has that little suitcase, which is one of those features you can use. But then you also have that 1 poison damage, which you can select all of these guys to take that 1 poison damage. And that's how a bomb splash attack works. Now when it comes to this poison, basically, let's go back to the Alchemist turn. Say he's still targeting that one individual. And let's move him up into... Well, he doesn't even need to move. Let's say he now has his blowgun drawn. Sheathe the bombs that he doesn't have anymore. Using blowgun darts. Okay. And then he'd spend 1 action to apply the poison. You can either create the action in here, or just tell your GM that you're doing that. And then do the strike. That actually hits. Good. So, you do the damage normally. Oh look, it's 1 damage, which ends up killing that kobold. Yay. Well, let's assume it had been on this kobold here. You do the damage. Well, you don't see anything on here for the poison, but you can now see that this use giant centipede poison button here. So, you see that should have 1 down. Yep, it is 1 down because it started at 3. And you can hit this button right here to show it in the screen over here. And you can see that it has the DC on here and all of the different stages. So this person selected, and it would be the GM doing this. They roll their save, they fail. So they have level 1 on it, so they would take that damage. And then in later turns, they would roll again to see if it goes to higher stages or not. And that is an example of how to do an Alchemist, building one, and then a quick rundown of how to use them. Well, this is Surcoat, signing off.